The mid-20th century was a period of rapid global transformation. To keep up with all this rapid change, mainstream architecture threw out the rulebook of the past and embraced industrial efficiency. This was the era where less is more became the ultimate law. Historical decorations were stripped away in favor of simple, sleek shapes designed purely for their function, often resulting in buildings that looked like isolated boxes dropped into a city. But not everyone was on board with this plain, sterile look. A few architects started pushing back with a completely different vision. They began to ask a game-changing question. What if architecture could not be understood as an isolated object? What if its meaning depended on its relationship with its surroundings and the complexity that shaped it? In this edition of ArchDaily's Architect Spotlight, we will explore the work of Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi, a duo who proposed a different way of reading the built environment. From a critical position toward modernism, they looked at how architecture in cities relate to popular culture in the United States, envisioning an architecture that is not understood as an isolated or simplified object, but as a complex, layered system rich in meaning, an approach that would later be associated with postmodernism. This is the work and legacy of Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi. Born in 1931 and raised in Johannesburg, Denise Scott Brown's early life shaped her view of architecture as an active social and infrastructural system. After studying in London, her interest in urban environments brought her to the United States to study urban planning. At the University of Pennsylvania in the early 1960s, she met Robert Venturi, who had worked under Eero Saarinen and Louis Kahn and shared a fascination with the complexities and contradictions of design. Between 1962 and 1964, Venturi and Scott Brown continuously exchanged ideas on campus, merging critiques of modernism with rigorous urban analysis. This dialogue quietly laid the groundwork for the collaborative approach that would define their legendary joint practice. Before formally starting work together, one of the most recognized projects in Venturi's early career was the Vanna Venturi house, built for his mother. This house quickly became a landmark, challenging the rules of modernism while reinterpreting vernacular American domestic forms. These ideas would later take shape in Robert Venturi's 1966 book Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, in which he argued that architecture should embrace ambiguity, multiple meanings, and historical references instead of striving for perfect clarity. The house's facade immediately catches the eye. An asymmetrical gable roof, a large central chimney, and windows of varying sizes create a playful rhythm. Even the front door is off-center, with the staircase visible through the facade, giving the house a sense of personality and life. One of Venturi's early projects, later associated with the ideas he developed with Denise Scott Brown, Guild House, was completed between 1960 and 1963 in Philadelphia as housing for the elderly. The Guild House facade combines symmetry and asymmetry, featuring its name in big letters along with playful brickwork and patterned openings. These design choices signal the building's function while giving it a recognizable identity on the street. The overall composition resists the idea of a monolithic, purely functional block, demonstrating that even modest social housing can be expressive, legible, and full of personality. After their early collaborations, in 1965, Denise Scott Brown left the University of Pennsylvania and moved to California. During this period, she studied the dynamics of rapidly growing cities such as Los Angeles and Las Vegas. As part of this exploration, she invited Robert Venturi to join her on a trip to Las Vegas, an experience that proved to be a turning point. Together, they observed and reframed how everyday popular architecture could offer surprising insights about the city and its surroundings, shaping a shared vision that would continue into 1967 when they married. Around this period, Venturi and Scott Brown, together with Steven Izenour, developed the research that would later become Learning from Las Vegas, one of their most influential theoretical works. The book transformed architects' understanding of urban and architectural symbolism by closely examining the Las Vegas Strip. Rather than rejecting what many considered popular architecture, the book highlighted its intelligence, efficiency, and adaptability. The authors introduced key concepts, such as the decorated shed, a type of building in which signs and ornamentation carry much of the meaning, in contrast to modernist ideals that prioritize functionality and form alone. They proposed a vocabulary for reading the city as a layered system of meanings, in which buildings, streets, billboards, and even parking lots contribute to the urban narrative. Around the same time, Venturi and Scott Brown were also bringing these observations into built projects. One example is Fire Station Number 4 in Columbus, Indiana, and the Brant House in Greenwich, Connecticut. Completed in the early 1970s, the Brant House demonstrates its continued interest in complexity, contradiction, and the lived experience of architecture. Inside, rooms are arranged to encourage both intimate domestic life and visual connections between spaces, reflecting the architect's belief that a home should respond to how people live rather than how it appears on paper. The house feels personal, layered, and rich in detail, making it a key example of how postmodern ideas could be applied to domestic architecture without sacrificing comfort or functionality. One of the most significant institutional projects completed by Venturi and Scott Brown is the Sainsbury Wing of the National Gallery, an extension of the London institution. Designed between 1985 and 1991, the building was created to house the museum's early Renaissance collection while responding to the highly sensitive historic setting of Trafalgar Square. Rather than reproducing the neoclassical architecture of the original gallery, Venturi and Scott Brown developed a design that engages with historical language while subtly transforming it. The facade incorporates classical elements but reinterprets them through shifts in scale and composition, allowing the building to relate to its surroundings while remaining clearly contemporary. Inside, the galleries unfold through a sequence of rooms designed to support the viewing of early Italian paintings. Variations in light, proportion, and spatial transitions guide visitors through the collection, creating an environment that balances clarity with subtle spatial complexity. The Sainsbury Wing demonstrates how the architect's interest in symbolism, context, and architectural communication could operate at the scale of a major cultural institution. By engaging with history without direct imitation, the project reflects its broader argument that architecture can acknowledge tradition while still inviting reinterpretation. Across their projects and books, Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi proposed a different way of looking at architecture. Rather than treating buildings as isolated objects defined only by form or function, they approached the built environment as part of a broader cultural and urban landscape. In many ways, the legacy of Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi lies in the questions they asked. At a time when modern architecture often pursued purity, order, and formal clarity, they challenged architects to reconsider what architecture could learn from the city's complexity. That brings us to the end of our deep dive into the life and work of Denise Scott Brown and Robert Venturi. But before we sign off, we want to hear from you. Which of their designs speaks to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and visit ArchDaily.com for more stories about architecture and the people behind it. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time on Architect Spotlight.